Welcome all to History with R&R Live Monday show. So, just a couple quick things off the top before I let Ryan take over, our distinguished guest. He's from the across the pond, so he's distinguished, right? Yeah, that's the word. Yeah, there we go. That's better than what we usually say here in Canada. Oh, they're from across the pond. Must have a broomstick up there. Never mind. All right. So
What was that? Whoa.
Canada and Britain have have a thing.
Yeah.
Dates back to World War One. But at any rate,
I think America goes a little further back than that.
Yeah, when we started really kicking a fuss and going, no, we're going to do it our way, was World War One. Right about Vimy Ridge. All right, so we have Dr. Alex, John DeMarco, Mrs. Canuck. Welcome, my love. And I hope you're feeling better soon. Eastern Burkholder and Thomas Potts and Deception's Cave of Villains. Welcome. All right.
And hello, Gorillas.
Yes,
Random
Gorillas.
Thoughts.
And Thomas Potts, yep. So a couple quick things off the top. Things should be returning back to normal. I will be replacing Mr. CCTV show with something. Pretty soon we should have another roundtable. Probably not this Friday, but next Friday. So that should be back on schedule. And then my month hiatus because my love was here and hang out with Mary, edit videos. Sorry y'all lost. Just the way it goes.
I can't imagine why we lost.
Yeah. And then my body, because we did so many things and I was on the go so much, decided,
oh my.
You did too much, you dumb son of a, and it just started yelling at me for about 4 days, and it's still there. So, it's a slow recovery back, but we should be back to normal by next week. Slowly getting everything all in order, and then maybe we'll hit that 500 by September, and I'll be happy.
You can get the community tab.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
It'll only take, if I get it done by September, it would only have taken 3 years.
And you can at people when you were in the description.
Oh,
it's been very useful for me when I talk about rising stars.
Yes,
so they
absolutely.
are aware that I believe that they are rising stars.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you're just crazy because you do like 6 videos a day. So
I've got.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it.
Down to 4 a day.
Down to 4 a day. You're still
only
120 a month.
I'm
120 videos a month
for that. I'd just be like sitting there in the editing booth for like 8 hours and
you edit.
Oh yeah. Any video that is not I've kind of slacked off and probably things have gotten through that I normally wouldn't have let through, but I usually edit everything.
Robert, we should read Thomas's comment. He says, the UK fought to keep America. For Canada, they were like, go ahead, leave. We don't need you.
Well, actually, it's kind of funny because during the United States Civil War, we had a whole bunch of British troops sent to us because, just in case, as they always say in the history books, in case the United States got any funny ideas. Yeah, so
we get funny ideas. Never.
We had more redcoats than usual. But at any rate, all right. So with all that rambling out of the way, I'm on the wrong channel to ramble, Robert.
You never ramble.
Oh,
rambling.
No, never. Ryan, why don't you introduce us to our topic of hand and
sure.
We'll go from there.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, in this live stream, not video, live stream, we will be talking about Joseph McCarthy, McCarthyism during the early 1950s, as well as the past and, if we have time, the present infiltration of the United States and the wider Western world by communists who now go by the name woke. I hope you enjoy, or at least find this live stream informative.
Yes.
So,
I'm sure it will be.
hmm.
All right. Well, you can start your points, and I'll chime in when my brain wakes up.
Sure.
Rambling will ramble.
Yeah.
Maybe it's time for Rambling Ryan. You never know. Well, I think we can start with the end of the Second World War, when the United States, the British Empire, and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, USSR, now it's Russia and all of its neighbors practically, defeated Germany, Italy, and Japan. And we were all friends at the end of the war, shaking hands, splitting Europe in two. But after that conflict, the Cold War began. Now, as opposed to a hot war, when the United States and the Western world, the capitalists, went up against the Soviet Union, the Eastern world, and the communists. Now, how does that relate to McCarthy, Joseph McCarthy, who was an American senator? Well, after the Second World War, from 1945 until 1950, the communists had managed to expand from the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe into China, into North Korea, into wider parts in the Middle East, and so on and so forth, and also going into Africa because it was decolonizing. So, and there was massive concern within the United States government that the communists were winning the Cold War because the West was making obvious tactical mistakes, such as pulling resources away from nationalist China. Back then it was called Formosa, today it's called Taiwan. And there were those who thought it was due to communist infiltration of the United States government, definite communist infiltration of the United States mainstream media. You can tell every time people try to expose the mainstream media, they get a lot of flack. Boy, I wonder why. As well as in education, Hollywood as well, where they were exposed. Some of them were exposed. And Joseph McCarthy was one of the main guys, main senators, who stood up and basically said, this is going on. This is happening. Infiltration is happening, to the point where communist spies gave the secrets to the atomic bomb to the Soviet Union. Thankfully, they were found, that the husband and wife were found and put to death. But this was going on. There was infiltration. And it needed to be stopped. Now, by modern standards, McCarthyism is seen as a witch hunt, going after poor, innocent people who have done no wrong. What complete bullshit. History is written by the victors, folks. And guess what? Communists were playing both sides.
Against the middle. The other thing too, I would state, coming out of World War II, since that's kind of our starting point, is McCarthy wasn't the only one that got kind of slapped with the leather glove, as it were, at the end of World War II, for speaking out against giving concessions to Russia. One of the major politicians that took the biggest hit was Churchill. Churchill was, going, no, we don't let them take Berlin. And they took Berlin because the United States president said so.
Yeah.
And the famous Iron Curtain speech from Churchill. Churchill, because he was a warmongerer, in other words, he was saying, fight against the damn Russians and push them back, lost the 1945 election in Britain.
He lost to plain, simple, middle-class socialist and his deputy throughout the war, Clement Attlee.
Yes. So he got kind of slapped with the leather glove, as it were. And the other one on the American side is Mr. Patton. Patton was not amused One, he was not amused because they got there first and had to wait for the Russians so they could take Berlin instead of just taking Berlin.
Mm.
He had to stop his
Patton,
tanks, and that never
Patton,
made Patton happy.
yes, the
Um,
Patton is a very interesting story because he died in quite mysterious
yes,
circumstances,
yeah.
and one wonders, folks. One wonders.
Well, depending on which conspiracy theory you subscribe to, it could be interesting.
Hmm.
But so there was there was two trains of thought.
Hmm.
There was one where we've had 4 years of war, 4 or 5 years of war, depending on which country you are,
Hmm.
and enough is enough. We're done with this war shite. We want peace and we want it to last for a couple minutes. And anybody who said anything that could change that was told to go sit in the back row and shut up.
Hmm.
And then the other train of thought was, okay, they were, the enemy of our enemy, and so they were our friend, but now we don't have the enemy, and this
Uh-oh.
isn't good.
Hmm.
So you had those two train of thoughts coming into World War II. And of course, you have the average human who didn't care one way or the other. Just make sure that my taxes are low, and I get a good rebate at the end of the year, and I'm a happy man. And there's jobs. Make sure there's jobs, but the rest of it, I could care less. And we still have those kind of people to this day. As long as their tax rate is good, and as long as they have a job, and as long as
Hmm.
for the most part, their needs are met. They are quite content, no matter what head of the snake is
Of
in
course.
charge.
Hmm.
And we, like I said, we still have those kind of people today. And then we have the hard line right, hard line left, hard line middle.
You
And
always
you
have that.
can
History
go
repeats.
you can go into a 17-hour podcast just on one or the other. Um,
At
but
least.
in terms of communism, it is really interesting because a lot of what happened between the end of World War II
Hmm.
and the death of Stalin is still just being uncovered. And then there's also not only that, but then you have to sift through what's propaganda and what actually happened.
Yes, of course.
Especially when it comes to Stalin, because Stalin had a wonderful tendency of photoshopping himself into pictures before photoshopping was popular. Little things like that.
Of course.
There are pictures of Stalin with Lenin, and there is proof that he was never there. But there are
Somebody had to
pictures
be
of
the
him
first to do
standing
that,
That's
right?
that's the kind of people that were the masters of infiltration, folks. People who subscribe to this point of view, I myself know, I still know people who subscribe to that point of view because when I was younger, for quite a few years, I was just like them. I believed in the revolution and the utopia. So I understand their tactics. And they love infiltrating institutions, gaining power in the hierarchies of those institutions, and using them for their own advantage. We see this today with the mainstream entertainment industry, the mainstream media, and we saw it way back then in McCarthy's time within Hollywood, within the media, within the State Department, and also within education.
Yeah. Well, see, and the other thing too, and I would state this gingerly as we go into this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that pisses me off more than anything is how easy we throw around terms in the modern era,
That is
such as
understandable.
communism. Everything is
Hmm.
communism. Canada is communism because we have healthcare. We're communism. It's like, what? No, shut up. You don't know what
Socialism
you're
is the
talking
one
about.
that gets
Sit
thrown
down,
around a
please.
lot.
You know, we throw around terms like just because we say it, there we go. It's like, no, no. This is no. There are difference between socialism, communism, and
Yes.
nationalism.
Yep.
They are
Yes,
different
definitely.
terms for a reason. So please keep them separate, you dummies. There are aspects of each in each one, but they are separate ideals. Too often in the modern vernacular, we just, well, anything that isn't the way I believe is communism.
Nope.
And that's, I think, where we get weakened.
I
Because,
think Ryan's getting attacked.
yeah, I think so.
There was a moth.
You okay,
a moth
Ryan?
attacked me.
Oh,
I killed it. Don't worry.
Oh, poor Mothman. But it to me, it just always comes across as weak and narrow-minded, because if you are that narrow-minded, you're easily corrupted, is the way I look at it. The other thing too is where a lot of these things take place isn't out in the open. It's behind closed doors. And the sooner we realize that, the better. Because very often, especially in this type of, and I'll let you talk in a minute, I promise.
Take your time.
If I had control, I'd mute him.
Yeah. A lot of times what we forget is the true people that are trying to damage the whatever country we're talking about are not out in the open. They are not drawing attention to themselves. They are not making public speeches. They are everything is done behind the scenes.
Yep.
Everything is done with a proxy. Everything is done quietly, that cannot be traced back to them, so that there's something called plausible deniability. And we forget that. And instead we go to the loudest section and go, well, they must be the problem. No, there's somebody behind them that is the problem. They're just the loudspeaker. Anyway, carry on.
Well, it's very good that you bring up the definitions problem, Robert, especially because of the fact that in our modern age, that words are taken, they're ripped apart, their meanings are corrupted, and then they're put back into the general environment, such as, but not limited to, what is a woman? But I would use these terms in the context of the time. So what communism was in the 1940s and 50s was mainly based in the Soviet Union, what is now Russia and its neighbors. Then in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you could say, well, there's different forms of communism. There's Russian communism, Chinese communism, African communism. So there are different variations of the same ideology. But at that time, Joseph McCarthy and those who were allied with him, as well as the support of many people up until he tried to investigate the armed forces in early 1954, then he faced a brick wall if ever there was one. He had the support of the American people until he truly threatened the infiltrators who had, in my view, managed to get into the American armed forces. And it does highlight a fact that, who knows, bad leadership may have led to the Vietnam War being lost, which is seen as a great communist victory in the Cold War. So that's my piece.
Yes. So I don't know. Like, to me, the Cold War was kind of a silly one. Uh, in some senses, it was very real in one hand.
Oh yeah.
But it was very the threat level at any given time depended on who you talked to. I've seen documentaries where people that were in power or in politics or in the area of espionage, etc., talk about it, and they'd be talking about their colleagues that because a lot of the time the people who are working behind the scenes, like your CIA, etc., and your informants, are people that have left that way of life for a reason. Normally, they are giving you information out of either revenge, patriotic duty, and the ones that were doing it out of revenge want the Cold War to turn hot. Right? They want that cold to go to hot because they want revenge. They want the communist bloc taken down, or they want the Americans taken down, or etc., vice versa, change the name if you will. So what ends up happening is your information you're getting has a grain of salt, because you'll get, we're going to be at war with Russia within the next 5 years. There was an ex-CIA agent that was telling, that was having an interview, and he was like, "This was one friend of mine who every time I talked to him, didn't matter 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, we were always going to war with Russia within 5 years. 5 years would come and go, and we were still going to war with Russia within 5 years. The estimates never changed. It was always within 5 years, right?
That's why I link what is going on today with all the problems, all the different issues that are going on today. They remind me so much of the Cold War. The only difference is, comparing now to then, is that today there are so many fronts. There's the conflicts in politics, there's conflicts in pop culture, there is a conflicts, even differences in opinion when it comes to eating food. Everything is political. And you see that with the Cold War. Everything was political. And you see today, everything has become infinitely more political.
Yeah.
Which is why.
Well,
Go on.
the main difference between now and then is the rate in which information can be transferred. And not only that, but if you're talking the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, even early 80s, in order for Joe Blow in Argentina to get his, if he stood up on a soapbox, he could maybe reach 3-4 people on the street corner.
Yes.
In the modern era, that same Joe Blow could reach people in the United States, Canada, Russia, China, anywhere with an internet connection, within 30 seconds.
Yes.
Right? So the ability for a single person to stand up on a soapbox worldwide is a lot easier now than it was then. So a lot of it is, we like to say, well, things are so much more in this category now. Not really. We just hear about it now. That's the difference. We hear about it now. But
you have a 24-hour news cycle now, too.
That too.
Yes.
But you go back to the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, something happened in Japan, we'd hear about it 2 weeks later. Now we hear about it a minute after. So it's kind of, and if it definitely helps, a politician get out of some hot water and they can switch focus to something, hey, we're all for that. Um,
Well, when it comes
know.
to
I see that.
McCarthy and what happened to him, because after he was and his team was finally, quote, exposed for being, quote, paranoid. Yeah, paranoid. He was ransacked by the mainstream media, and within a few years, because he was a heavy drinker, and I think he was what was it again? He was addicted to painkillers, I think. I forgot what they were exactly. But a few years after he and his team were basically exposed, he passed away. Now, I personally think that was seen as a warning. If you stand against the infiltrators who are in these institutions, this is what's going to happen to you. Your life is going to be ruined. You're going to be canceled. I mean, plenty of people have been canceled since 1954, folks. And you won't be able to be part of public life. So he tried to expose these people, as many after him and even before him. I mean, JFK went against these people, stood out against these people as a senator in the 40s, especially in regards to China becoming communist, falling under Soviet influence. So Joseph McCarthy, in my view, is a classic example of what happens if you go against the infiltrators in our institutions. That's my view.
And it's not only going against them, but
Mhm.
it's going against the norm or going against the status quo. Because a lot of times I think we give a little too much credit to people who are working behind the scenes. What happens is they start the ball rolling,
Mm.
and then as Churchill, as many faults as the man has, once said, the dumbest person on the planet is a voter. Um, because if you all you got to do is start that ball rolling and then step back.
Mm.
That's it. You just start the ball and step back. You don't keep going. You just start it and back off and see if that ball gains speed. If the
Mm.
ball gains speed, just sit back and watch. Watch the bull go through the china shop. Um, you don't have to be there when the bull goes through the china shop, but if you were the one that poked it with an iron poker to get it started running,
Yes,
like
definitely.
who's to say you were even there? Like
Mm.
we we tend to give a lot of credit to them. The problem is a lot of times it's just the fact that a person or a group of people were gullible enough to get on the bandwagon. Um, or it threatens the easiest way to get a population to agree with you is by fear.
Mm.
If you make them
Oh, yeah.
fear that, well, if we do this course of action, your way of life is going to change.
Mm.
Well, nobody likes change. We
And
must stop it immediately.
we've
Um,
seen that over the last few years. But I do believe that there has been a definite change from McCarthy's time until today, and of course 70 years. Of course, you'd expect some level of change. I mean, compare 1880 to 1950.
yeah,
There was a gradual change, but from 1950 to 2020, or 1952 to 2022, it's been an incredibly fast change.
yeah.
Now, if that has not been as a result of some form of manipulation or infiltration, then Christ, we're never going to stop.
No,
I definitely think the process of our change as a society, as a culture, over the last 50, not 50, 60 to 70 years, I personally believe it started in the 60s. But that kind of change, I personally believe, is got to be some form of manipulation or infiltration,
yeah.
some form or another.
Well, you have those people, like I said, there,
Mm.
but they're never on the forefront.
They're behind the scenes.
They're always behind the scenes poking the bowl to get it started running, and then they watch to see if it goes through the china shop. They're not front and center. The ones that are front and center usually aren't the threat. Usually what you got to do is look behind them to see who's starting it.
Man behind the curtain.
Yeah, the man behind the curtain, the one pulling the strings, the one,
the woman, case may be.
Yeah. So it's a lot more complicated than it just being these people against us against them. It worked well in the Cold War because it was easy. You had a target, you had a villain, as it were, whether you were in the Eastern Bloc or Western Bloc. If you're in the Eastern Bloc, the Western Bloc is the enemy. If you're in the Western Bloc, the Eastern Bloc's the enemy. It was very basic. The problem with the modern society is we have many enemies and have no idea who they are or where they are.
It's like we've gone from 2 dimensions of warfare and of conflict to 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
It's like we've transcended one form of conflict, and we did that through the Cold War because of infiltration.
Yeah.
And now we are in a sort of 3-dimensional conflict.
Yeah. And the other thing that, for all of its benefits, the one thing that has made it even easier is the internet.
Yes.
I mean,
that could be the 3rd dimension.
Yeah. If you think about it, if a person who was of that persuasion wanted to persuade the United States, they had to be in the United States.
And they had to be within the institutions.
Yeah.
Of power.
Now they don't. Right? It can be Joe Blow number 7 on Twitter. All you need is the following.
I do understand the disadvantages of that, but the key advantage I have seen is that ordinary people, normal people like ourselves, communicate with one another, build communities online, build coalitions, broad churches, whatever you wish to call them, of people, some people very, very friendly with each other, some other people very neutral, not hostile, but neutral with one another, go along to get along, that sort of thing. And it's sort of built this massive coalition, loose coalition. We don't have a set of rules, but this mass coalition of people, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of creators, whether they're content creators, live streamers, shorts video makers, who stand as an alternative to the present system.
Yeah.
Mainstream entertainment, mainstream media, and you could also go as far to say, especially over the past few years, mainstream politics.
Yes.
Although we will stay clear of that because we know what Mama Susan is like.
But like I said, to me, it's just the problems that we faced in those eras are still here and alive and well today.
Yes.
They just wear a different mask. I don't even know if it's really communism per se anymore.
No, it's evolved because communism, as it was back then, died in the 1990s. China had to evolve. North Korea hasn't, and look what happened. Look what's happened to it. And what we are facing today, that's why I mentioned woke, is, in my view, and I'm sure people will disagree, the successors to the communists of old, who saw what worked and what didn't work in the Cold War, and now are pursuing policies that work for them then in today's world. And that's why they are so effective. And that's why the pushback against them, it's recent over the past 5 years, and thankfully it's really pushing back in some instances. If you've seen the latest news headlines in America, you'll know what I mean. But they are there, they are new and improved, and, well, here we are today.
Yes.
That's why I mentioned the modern parallels.
I think what I'll do is I will let everybody kind of promote themselves, especially Ryan here, who is a madman and releases more videos than I ever want to try to edit. I
don't know how you do it.
and then we'll let Jeff. I believe he still has a show on Sunday and another one. I'll let him.
Yeah, I'm
him
With,
busy, man.
and I'll give my
Not
final
as busy
thought
as
here, and we'll
he.
get out of here. All right, so Ryan, you're our honored guest, so you can go first.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching this show. If you haven't already, please check out History with R&R, this channel. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can follow Robert Knowles, Rambling Canuck, at Rambling Canuck. He's a great live streamer. He's also a rising star, so let's make him a rising star, folks, and get him to 500. You can also check out Jeff, Professor Brainy Specs. He has channel, but he doesn't make content himself, I don't believe. He's mostly on other people's shows,
Yes.
such as Robert and John DeMarco. You're starting a new game show. Love to be on one day. So
I'd
as
love
for
to have
me,
you on. So.
oh sure. As for me, Ryan Roger Athay, you can find me with that name on YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. I will never be on TikTok. It's Chinese communist garbage. I am on Facebook, but I never use it. So if you do friend me there, I'll probably friend you, but I won't respond because I don't use it. So that's me.
Awesome. Jeff?
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank Ryan for coming on today.
Oh.
You had an interesting topic to discuss, and
yeah.
I'm glad you could make it on. I just want to invite everyone, as Ryan already said, excuse me.
Call me Ryan. You call me Roger when there's another Ryan.
Well, you have that Ryan Roger going on, and I always want to say Roger. I don't know why. I just do. I think I can blame Robert for that. I think he got me started. But as Ryan has already stated, have a Sunday show at 4:30 Eastern. It's called A Question of Trek, a game show. We have contestants come on, play with a couple of our team captains, and they try to score points answering Star Trek questions. And if you'd like to be a contestant on the show, just get a hold of Continuum Trek on Twitter, at Continuum Trek, and we can get you on the show. We'd love to have you there. We have a lot of fun, a lot of banter, a lot of jokes on that show. I think people come for the jokes more for that than the actual quiz, but a lot of fun on that show. Also, I've been on another channel, and boy, his name just escaped me. Potato Revan on Friday nights. Lately, I've been on his show talking Orville. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Friday nights. So if you want to check out the latest edition of the Orville, we'll be reviewing those episodes on Friday nights at 8 Eastern. So tune in there. And I am a busy man. I am also on another channel on Saturday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We got a new game show going on John DeMarco's channel, Jeopardy. And if you'd like to be a contestant, just go to John DeMarco's channel Saturday evenings. You can join in and be a contestant on Jeopardy. We've got a custom Jeopardy game board that we're using that I've created. John comes up with the clues, and we just have a great time. So tune in there.
Awesome. And for me, Rambling Canucks should be back up and running by next week. I'm slowly getting everything in place. I'm kind of revamping that channel because I don't know, most new things that come out, such as that dreadful Star Wars show, just infuriate me. So I think I'm just going to go to hockey and other video games on Rambling Canuck and karaoke and maybe talk about wrestling because Vince McMahon is screwed. But at any rate, or how will he beat the rap this time?
Hold on. Did you say the Star Wars show was bad?
Yeah.
You didn't like Kenobi?
There were a few parts where I almost threw the remote at the TV.
Okay, I liked it. So you can throw it at me.
I will state this. I will state this. If they had done what I wanted, which was them to keep Vader and Kenobi apart, Vader just get there as Kenobi's leaving. Kenobi get there as Vader's leaving.
Oh, how interesting would that be? Happy.
But you don't have
like in
Vader
the Clone Wars with Anakin and Grievous.
But that's a topic for another channel. I think I'll
Sorry, I
end
couldn't
by saying
resist.
two things because we already mentioned Star Wars. I got to because I'm a jerk. So first thing, I'm going to steal a quote from a friend of mine back in my debate days, and end this by saying, in the Bible, if you're around religious people, they will tell you that the devil's greatest lie was that he convinced mankind of is that he doesn't exist.
Mm.
In our population, the greatest lie that was ever bought, hook, line, and sinker, was that the Cold War ended and we won. Next, just remember to follow our distinguished guest. He is the prequel champion, Roger. And
I actually do like the prequels and the battle droid.
So with that,
So do I.
thank you and good night.